The auditorium was packed with over 2,000 people that evening. The annual city talent competition had become the biggest event of the year. Parents held their phones ready to record. Judges sat behind a long table with serious expressions on their faces. The lights were bright and hot. The stage looked enormous from the audience seats. Everyone was waiting to see something special. Nobody knew that they were about to witness something they would never forget. Behind the heavy red curtain, a 12-year-old girl named Maya stood alone. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was beating so fast that she could hear it in her ears. She wore a simple white dress that her grandmother had made for her. Her dark hair was tied back in a neat ponytail. She held nothing in her hands. No instrument. No props. Just herself and her fear. Maya came from a small town 3 hours away from the city. Her family had driven all night to get here. They sat somewhere in the middle of the audience. Her mother was nervous too. Her father kept checking his watch. Her younger brother was eating popcorn without a care in the world. They had no idea what was about to happen either. The journey to this moment had been long and difficult. Maya had discovered something about herself when she was only 4 years old. She had been sitting in the living room while her mother watched a classical music concert on television. A famous pianist was playing a complicated piece. Maya watched with wide eyes. She had never seen a piano before, but something strange happened inside her mind. She could see the music, not just hear it. She could actually see it like colors and shapes moving through the air. That night, little Maya had walked to the old keyboard that sat in the corner of their house. It belonged to her grandfather, who had passed away before she was born. Nobody had touched it in years. It was dusty and some keys were broken. But Maya sat down and placed her tiny fingers on the keys. Then she started to play. She played the exact piece she had just heard on television. Every note was perfect. Every rhythm was correct. She played it from beginning to end without making a single mistake. Her mother had dropped the cup she was holding. The sound of breaking glass filled the room. But Maya kept playing. She was lost in the music. Her eyes were closed. Her small body moved with the melody. When she finally stopped, she turned around to see her mother crying. From that day forward, everything changed. Her parents did not know what to do. They were simple people. Her father worked at a factory. Her mother cleaned houses for rich families. They did not have money for music lessons. They did not know anyone in the music world. But they knew their daughter had a gift that was rare and precious. Word spread quickly in their small town. The neighbors started calling Maya a miracle child. Some people did not believe the stories. They thought her parents were lying or exaggerating. But whenever someone challenged the claims, Maya would prove them wrong. She could hear any piece of music once and play it perfectly. She could play instruments she had never touched before. By the time she was 6, she could play the piano, violin, and guitar. By 8, she had added the flute and drums. By 10, she was composing her own music, but Maya was not a normal child in other ways. She was extremely shy. She did not like crowds. Loud noises scared her. She had very few friends at school. Other children thought she was strange because she was always humming melodies or tapping rhythms on her desk. She preferred to be alone with her music. The spotlight was her greatest enemy. Her parents tried to get her opportunities. They sent videos to music schools and talent agencies. Most of them never responded. A few said they were not interested. One famous music teacher watched her video and laughed. He said the video must be fake. No child could play like that without years of training. He accused her parents of trying to create a hoax. The rejection hurt Maya deeply. She started to believe that maybe she was not good enough. Maybe her gift was not real. Maybe she was just imagining things. She stopped playing for almost a year. Her parents watched helplessly as their daughter fell into sadness. The music that once filled their home went silent. Then one day, her grandmother came to visit. She was a wise old woman who had seen many things in her life. She sat with Maya in her room and held her hands. She told Maya a story about her grandfather. He had also been a musician. He had also been shy and afraid. He had died with his music still inside him because he never had the courage to share it with the world. She told Maya that hiding a gift was the same as throwing it away. Those words changed everything. Maya started playing again. But this time she played with a new purpose. She was not playing for fame or money. She was playing for her grandfather. She was playing for everyone who had a dream but was too scared to chase it. She was playing because the music needed to be heard. When her parents saw the poster for the city talent competition, they almost did not mention it to Maya. The competition was huge. Famous producers and record labels sent representatives to watch. Winners had gone on to become international stars. The competition was known for being harsh and competitive. Many talented performers had left the stage in tears, but Maya surprised everyone. She said she wanted to enter. Her parents exchanged worried looks. They remembered how shy she was. They remembered how she could barely speak to strangers. They asked her if she was sure. Maya nodded slowly. She said it was time. She said she was tired of hiding. The registration process was complicated. There were hundreds of applicants. Maya had to submit a video audition. When the organizers watched her video, they were confused. The girl in the video played with incredible skill, but she looked so young and so ordinary. They almost rejected her application, but something made them give her a chance. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was fate. Now Maya stood behind that curtain, waiting for her name to be called. She could hear the performer before her finishing their act. The audience was clapping politely. They sounded bored. The competition had been going on for 3 hours. People were getting tired. Some were checking their phones. Others were whispering to each other. Nobody expected anything special from the next performer. The program listed her simply as Maya, age 12, from a small town nobody had heard of. No fancy introduction. No impressive credentials. Just a name and an age. The host walked onto the stage with a microphone. He looked at his card and smiled slightly. Another unknown kid, he thought. Probably another average performance. He announced her name without much enthusiasm. The audience gave a weak round of applause. A few people headed to the bathroom, thinking they would not miss anything important. The judges looked at their notes from previous performers. One of them yawned. Maya took a deep breath. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. She thought about her grandfather who never got this chance. She thought about all the people who had doubted her. She thought about the music that had been waiting inside her for so long. Then she stepped out from behind the curtain and walked toward the center of the stage. The lights hit her face. She squinted for a moment. The audience was a sea of shadows. She could not see individual faces. In a way that made it easier. She walked slowly, carefully, trying not to trip. Her legs felt like jelly. Her mouth was dry. She reached the grand piano that sat in the middle of the stage. It was the most beautiful instrument she had ever seen. Black and shiny. The keys gleamed under the lights. She sat down on the bench. The microphone in front of her caught every sound. The audience could hear her breathing. It was shaky and nervous. Some people in the crowd exchanged glances. This girl looked terrified. She looked like she might run away at any moment. A few people felt sorry for her. Others just wanted her to get it over with so they could go home. Maya placed her fingers on the keys. They were cold against her skin. She closed her eyes. The noise of the world faded away. The whispers stopped. The shuffling stopped. Everything became silent. In that silence, she found her grandfather. She found her grandmother. She found her family. She found every person who had ever believed in her. And she found the music. It rose up from somewhere deep inside her chest. It filled her completely. And then she began to play. The first note rang out across the auditorium like a bell. It was clear and pure. It hung in the air for a moment before fading into the second note. Then the third. Then a cascade of sound that seemed impossible to come from just two hands. The audience stopped moving. The people who had been walking to the bathroom froze in the aisles. The judges looked up from their papers. Something extraordinary was happening on that stage. Maya played a piece that nobody in the audience had ever heard before. It was her own composition. She had written it during her darkest days, when she had stopped believing in herself. She called it The Awakening. It started soft and sad, like tears falling on a window pane. The melody spoke of loneliness and doubt. It told the story of a girl who thought she was not enough. The audience could feel every emotion. Some people got goosebumps on their arms. Others felt their eyes getting wet. Then the music began to change. The sad notes transformed into something stronger. The tempo increased. The melody grew powerful and determined. It was like watching a flower bloom in fast motion. The sadness did not disappear. It became part of something bigger. It became fuel for something beautiful. Maya's fingers danced across the keys with impossible speed. Her body swayed with the rhythm. She was no longer a nervous girl. She was a vessel for something greater than herself. The judges leaned forward in their seats. One of them was a famous composer who had won international awards. His name was Robert Chun. He had been judging talent shows for 20 years. He thought he had seen everything, but in all his years he had never witnessed anything like this. Tears started flowing down his cheeks. He did not wipe them away. He did not care who saw him crying. The music had broken through every wall he had built around his heart. In the audience, Maya's parents held each other's hands tightly. Her mother was sobbing silently. Her father had forgotten how to breathe. Her little brother had stopped eating his popcorn. Even he understood that something special was happening. The family had heard Maya play thousands of times at home. But this was different. This was their daughter sharing her soul with the world for the first time. The piece lasted 7 minutes. 7 minutes that felt like an entire lifetime. Maya took the audience on a journey through pain and healing, through darkness and light, through fear and courage. When she played the final note, she let it ring until it faded into complete silence. Then she lifted her hands from the keys and placed them in her lap. Her eyes were still closed. She was afraid to open them. She was afraid to see the reaction. For 3 long seconds there was absolute silence in the auditorium. Nobody clapped. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Maya's heart sank. She thought she had failed. She thought she had made a terrible mistake. All her fears came rushing back. She wanted to run off the stage and hide forever. She wanted to disappear into the floor. Then one person stood up. It was an old woman in the 3rd row. She had white hair and wrinkled hands. She started clapping slowly. Then another person stood up. Then another. Then 10 more. Then 100. Within seconds, the entire audience was on their feet. The applause was thunderous. It shook the walls of the auditorium. People were cheering and crying and shouting. Some were hugging strangers next to them. The standing ovation went on and on. Maya finally opened her eyes. She could not believe what she was seeing. All these people standing for her. All these people celebrating her music. She looked for her family in the crowd and found them. Her mother was waving with both hands. Her father was pumping his fist in the air. Her brother was jumping up and down. She smiled the biggest smile of her life. The host ran onto the stage with his microphone. He had been doing this job for 15 years. He had introduced famous singers and dancers and magicians. But he had never seen a reaction like this. He tried to calm the audience down so the show could continue. But the clapping would not stop. Every time it started to fade, it would rise up again like a wave. Robert Chun, the famous composer, stood up from the judges' table. He walked toward the stage without asking permission. The other judges looked confused. This was not part of the normal procedure. But Robert did not care about procedures anymore. He climbed the steps and walked to where Maya sat at the piano. The audience finally got quiet. Curious about what was happening, Robert knelt down so he was at eye level with Maya. The microphone picked up his voice. His words echoed through the auditorium. He asked her how old she was. Maya said she was 12. He asked her how long she had been playing piano. Maya said she started when she was 4. He asked her who had taught her. Maya said nobody. she taught herself. Robert's jaw dropped. The audience gasped. He asked her about the piece she had just played. Maya explained that she had written it herself. She said she wrote it during a very hard time in her life. She said she almost gave up on music forever. But her grandmother helped her find her way back. Robert shook his head in disbelief. He had heard compositions from musicians who had studied for decades. None of them compared to what this child had created. Robert stood up and faced the audience. He grabbed the microphone from the confused host. He said that in all his years in the music industry, he had never encountered raw talent like this. He said Maya was not just talented. She was a once-in-a-generation prodigy. He said the music world needed to pay attention because a star had just been born on this stage. The audience erupted again. People were pulling out their phones and recording. They wanted to capture this moment. They wanted to remember this night forever. Social media was about to explode. Within hours, millions of people would know Maya's name, but Maya was not thinking about fame or followers. She was thinking about one person. She was thinking about her grandfather who had died before she was born. She was thinking about how he had kept his music hidden because he was afraid. She was thinking about how she had almost made the same mistake. Tears rolled down her cheeks. But they were happy tears. She had honored his memory. She had set the music free. The competition continued, but it was clear that Maya had already won. The remaining performers did their best, but the audience was distracted. Everyone was talking about the shy girl who had transformed before their eyes. The judges went through the motions of scoring other acts, but their hearts were already decided. Maya went backstage and was immediately surrounded by reporters and photographers. They pushed microphones in her face and asked her hundreds of questions. She felt overwhelmed. Her shyness came rushing back. She started to panic. Her breathing became fast and shallow. Her hands started shaking again. Her father pushed through the crowd and wrapped his arms around her. He told the reporters to give her space. He said she was just a child and needed time to process everything. Some reporters were pushy and would not leave. But her father stood firm. He protected his daughter like a lion protecting its cub. Eventually, the reporters backed off. The family found a quiet corner backstage. Maya sat down on an old wooden crate. Her mother brought her a glass of water. Her brother gave her a piece of his popcorn. They sat together in silence for a few minutes. No words were needed. They all understood what had just happened. Their lives were about to change forever. When it was time for the results, Maya walked back to the stage with the other finalists. There were 12 performers in total. They stood in a line while the host built suspense. He announced the third-place winner. It was a teenage boy who had done impressive acrobatic tricks. He smiled and accepted his trophy. The host announced the second-place winner. It was a woman in her 20s who had sung an opera piece beautifully. She bowed gracefully and took her trophy. Then the host paused dramatically. He said the judges had come to a unanimous decision for the first time in the history of the competition. All 4 judges had given the same performer a perfect score. He said the winner had touched everyone's hearts tonight. Then he called Maya's name. She walked forward on trembling legs. The trophy was almost as big as she was. She had to hold it with both hands. The audience gave her another standing ovation. This time, she did not close her eyes. She looked out at all the faces. She saw strangers who felt like friends. She saw her family crying with pride. She saw judges nodding with respect. She saw a world that was ready to embrace her. The host asked if she wanted to say anything. Maya leaned into the microphone. Her voice was soft and shaky, but her words were clear. She thanked her family for believing in her when nobody else did. She thanked her grandmother for giving her courage. And she thanked her grandfather, even though he was not there to hear it. She said she played for him tonight. She said she hoped he was proud. In the audience, Maya's grandmother watched through teary eyes. She had not been able to make the trip due to her health, but Maya's mother had set up a video call so she could watch from home. The old woman held her phone close to her heart. She whispered that yes, her husband would have been very proud. The proudest grandfather in the world. After the ceremony, Robert Chun approached Maya's parents. He handed them his business card. He said he wanted to help Maya share her gift with the world. He said he had connections with music schools, record labels, and concert halls. He said Maya deserved the best opportunities. He said he would make sure she got them. The video of Maya's performance spread like wildfire across the internet. By morning, it had been viewed over 5 million times. By the end of the week, that number had grown to 50 million. People from every corner of the world watched the shy girl in the white dress transform into a musical powerhouse. They shared the video with friends and family. They posted comments about how the performance had made them cry. They called Maya a miracle, a genius, an angel sent from heaven. News networks picked up the story. Television crews arrived at Maya's small town within days. They wanted interviews. They wanted to film her house, her school, her piano. They wanted to know everything about this mysterious prodigy who had appeared out of nowhere. The quiet streets where Maya had grown up were suddenly filled with vans and cameras and busy people with microphones. Maya's parents struggled to handle the sudden attention. Their phone rang constantly. Emails flooded their inbox. Letters arrived by the truckload. Some were from fans expressing love and admiration. Others were from record companies offering contracts. Some were from wealthy people offering to sponsor Maya's education. A few were from strange individuals making wild claims and requests. The family did not know how to sort through it all. Robert Chun kept his promise to help. He flew to their small town and met with the family several times. He explained how the music industry worked. He warned them about people who would try to take advantage of Maya's talent. He helped them find a good lawyer and a trustworthy manager. He treated Maya like a daughter he had never had. The family grew to trust him completely. Within a month, Maya received an invitation that changed everything. The Royal Academy of Music in London wanted to offer her a full scholarship. It was one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. Students studied there for years hoping to get noticed. Many never succeeded. But the Academy had watched Maya's video and immediately recognized her extraordinary ability. They wanted her to join them. The decision was not easy. Maya had never been away from her family. She had never traveled outside her own country. London was on the other side of the world. Everything would be different. The language, the food, the weather, the people. Her parents worried about sending their 12-year-old daughter so far away. They worried about her shyness and how she would cope with such a big change, but Maya surprised them once again. She said she wanted to go. She said this was the opportunity her grandfather never had. She said she owed it to him to chase this dream as far as it would take her. Her words were brave, but her voice trembled as she spoke them. She was scared too. But she had learned that courage was not the absence of fear. Courage was doing something even when you were afraid. The Academy made special arrangements for Maya. Because she was so young, her mother would move to London with her. They would live in a small apartment near the school. Her father would stay behind to work and take care of her brother. The family would be split across 2 continents. It was a sacrifice that broke their hearts. But they knew it was the right thing to do. The day Maya left for London was the hardest day of her life. She hugged her father at the airport for what felt like hours. Her brother tried to act tough, but his eyes were red from crying. Her grandmother had come to say goodbye despite her failing health. She pressed a small photograph into Maya's hand. It was a picture of Maya's grandfather sitting at a piano. On the back, he had written the words that had become Maya's motto. Let the music speak when words cannot. The flight was long and exhausting. Maya could not sleep. She stared out the window at the clouds below and thought about everything she was leaving behind. She thought about her bedroom with the posters on the wall. She thought about the tree in the backyard where she used to sit and compose melodies. She thought about her friends at school who had finally started to understand her. She wondered if she was making a mistake. When the plane landed in London, Maya felt like she had arrived on a different planet. Everything was so big and fast and loud. The airport was enormous. People rushed in every direction. Announcements echoed in languages she did not understand. She held her mother's hand tightly as they navigated through the crowds. Her heart was pounding, but she kept walking forward. The Royal Academy of Music was more beautiful than Maya had imagined. The building was old and grand, with tall columns and stone statues. Inside, the halls were lined with portraits of famous musicians who had studied there. Some of them had changed the history of music. Now Maya would walk these same halls. She felt very small and very insignificant. Her first weeks at the academy were incredibly difficult. The other students were older and more experienced. Many came from wealthy families with generations of musical tradition. They looked at Maya with curiosity and sometimes with jealousy. She was the youngest student in the history of the school. She had no formal training. She did not fit in. The classes were challenging in ways Maya had not expected. She could play any instrument brilliantly, but she had never learned music theory. She did not know how to read sheet music properly. She did not understand the technical terms her professors used. For the first time in her life, Maya felt stupid. She felt like a fraud who had gotten in by accident. Some students were kind to her. They offered to help her catch up. They invited her to practice with them. They saw past her young age and recognized her incredible gift. But others were cruel. They whispered behind her back. They laughed at her simple clothes and her rural accent. They said she did not belong in such a prestigious place. One incident nearly broke Maya completely. A group of older students cornered her in a practice room. They demanded that she prove her so-called genius. They placed a complicated piece of music in front of her and told her to play it perfectly on the first try. If she failed, they said they would tell everyone she was a fake. Maya looked at the sheet music. It was the most complex piece she had ever seen. Pages and pages of dense notation. She could not read it fluently. She did not know where to begin. The students laughed at her silence. They said they knew she was a fraud. They said the video must have been edited or staged. They said she did not deserve to be there. Maya felt hot tears streaming down her face. She wanted to run away. She wanted to hide. She wanted to go back home to her small town where nobody expected anything from her, but then something clicked inside her mind. She looked at the first few measures of the sheet music. She could not read it quickly, but she understood the patterns. She understood the structure. Music was a language, and she had been speaking it since she was 4 years old. She just needed to translate. She sat down at the piano and placed the sheet music where she could see it. She studied it for a full minute while the students watched and snickered. Then she began to play. She started slowly, carefully, decoding each measure as she went. But as she continued, her mind made connections faster and faster. The music theory she had been struggling with in class suddenly made sense. Everything clicked into place. By the time she reached the middle of the piece, she was no longer reading the music. She was feeling it. She anticipated where the melody would go before her eyes found the notes. Her fingers moved with confidence and power. She added her own interpretations, her own emotions, her own soul to the composition. What had started as a test became a transformation. When she finished, the room was silent. The students who had tormented her stood with their mouths open. They could not believe what they had just witnessed. One of them quietly apologized and left the room. The others followed without saying a word. Maya sat alone at the piano, her heart still racing. She had proven something important. Not to them, but to herself. That night, Maya called her father on a video chat. She told him everything that had happened. She told him about the bullying and the tears and the moment when she almost gave up. She told him about sitting at the piano and finding her strength again. Her father listened without interrupting. When she finished, he smiled and said he had never been prouder of her. He reminded her of something her grandmother always said. A diamond is just a piece of coal that handled stress exceptionally well. He said Maya was becoming a diamond. The pressure and the challenges were not destroying her. They were making her stronger and more beautiful. He said the world would try to break her many times, but she would survive every time because the music was her armor. Maya took those words to heart. She stopped worrying about fitting in. She stopped comparing herself to other students. She focused on her music and her studies. She practiced for hours every day. She stayed after class to ask professors questions. She read books about music theory until her eyes hurt. She was determined to earn her place at the academy through hard work, not just natural talent. Slowly, the other students began to change their attitudes. They saw how hard Maya worked. They saw her improvement week after week. They saw that her genius was real and that she was not arrogant about it. One by one, they started approaching her differently. Some became friends. Others became admirers. The bullying stopped completely. Her professors were amazed by her progress. One of them, a stern elderly woman named Professor Helena, had been teaching for over 40 years. She had trained some of the greatest musicians of the century. The spring concert at the Royal Academy of Music was the most elegant event Maya had ever attended. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Red velvet seats stretched across the grand hall. Men wore expensive suits and women wore glittering gowns. The air smelled of perfume and anticipation. This was a world Maya had only seen in movies. Now she was about to perform for it. Before the show, Maya peeked through the curtain at the audience. She saw faces she recognized from magazine covers and television interviews. Famous conductors, celebrated pianists, influential critics who could make or break careers with a single review. Her stomach twisted with nerves. These people had heard the best musicians in the world. What would they think of a 13-year-old girl from a small town? Her mother noticed her anxiety and pulled her into a hug. She whispered that no matter what happened tonight, she was already the most successful person in their family. She had traveled farther and achieved more than anyone else in their history. She had made the impossible possible. Maya felt tears forming but blinked them away. She could not ruin her makeup before going on stage. The concert began with performances from senior students. They played flawlessly, their years of training evident in every note. The audience applauded politely after each piece. Maya watched from the wings, studying their techniques, admiring their confidence. She wondered if she would ever feel as comfortable on stage as they looked. Finally, it was her turn. The host announced her name along with a brief introduction. He mentioned that she was the youngest student at the academy and that she would be performing her own composition. A murmur went through the crowd. Some people raised their eyebrows skeptically. Others leaned forward with curiosity. A few pulled out their programs to read more about this unusual performer. Maya walked onto the stage wearing a midnight blue dress her mother had saved for months to buy. Her hair was styled elegantly, making her look older than her years. She carried herself with a grace that surprised even her. Inside she was trembling. But outside she projected calm. She had learned to wear confidence like a costume. Even when she did not feel it, she sat at the grand piano and adjusted the bench. The instrument before her was worth more than her family's house. It was a Steinway, handcrafted with precision and care. When she pressed a key, the sound was rich and full, unlike anything she had played before. For a moment, she forgot about the audience. She forgot about the pressure. She just felt grateful to be touching such a beautiful instrument. She closed her eyes and placed her hands on the keys. The audience fell silent. Even the people who had been skeptical stopped their whispering. There was something about the way this young girl held herself that demanded attention. Something that suggested they were about to witness something special. Maya began to play the journey. The opening notes were soft and uncertain, like the first steps into an unknown land. They captured the fear she had felt arriving in London, the loneliness of being far from home, the confusion of entering a world where she did not belong. The melody wandered and stumbled, searching for its way. Then the music shifted. It became darker, more turbulent. The notes clashed and fought against each other. This was the section about her struggles at the academy. The bullying, the self-doubt, the nights she had cried herself to sleep, the days she had wanted to quit. Maya poured every painful memory into the keys. The audience could feel her suffering. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but Maya did not stay in the darkness. The music evolved again. A new theme emerged, strong and determined. It was the sound of rising from failure, the sound of refusing to give up. The melody climbed higher and higher, gaining power with each measure. It was triumphant without being arrogant. It was confident without being boastful. It was the sound of a young girl finding her voice. The piece built toward a magnificent climax. Maya's hands flew across the keys with incredible speed. The music filled every corner of the grand hall. It reached into the hearts of every person present. For those few minutes, nothing else existed in the world. There was only Maya and her piano and the story she was telling. When the final note faded into silence, Maya lifted her hands and opened her eyes. The audience sat frozen for what felt like an eternity. Then one person began to clap. Then another. Then the entire hall exploded into applause. People rose to their feet. They cheered and shouted praise. Some wiped tears from their eyes. It was the biggest standing ovation in the history of the Academy's spring concert. Maya stood and bowed, overwhelmed by the response. She looked for her mother in the audience and found her standing in the aisle, crying and clapping harder than anyone else. Robert Chen was beside her, beaming with pride. Even the stern Professor Helena was applauding with enthusiasm, which her students said they had never seen before. The next morning, reviews of the concert appeared in newspapers and music journals around the world. Critics used words like extraordinary, unprecedented, and once in a lifetime. They compared Maya to legendary composers who had started young. Some said she might be the most naturally gifted musician alive. The attention was overwhelming. Record companies that had ignored Maya before now competed for her attention. They offered millions for exclusive contracts. They promised world tours and professional recordings. They sent representatives with fancy presentations and bigger promises. Maya's small apartment was flooded with gifts and proposals, but Maya's parents and Robert Chun were careful. They had seen too many young talents destroyed by the music industry. Children pushed too hard, too fast, until they burned out or broke down. They did not want that for Maya. They wanted her to have a normal life alongside her extraordinary gift. They wanted her to grow at her own pace. Together, they made a plan. Maya would continue her studies at the academy until she turned 18. She would perform occasionally at special events but would not do extensive tours. She would record albums when she was ready, not when companies demanded. Her education and well-being would always come first. It was a slower path to fame, but it was the right path for her. Some people criticized this decision. Industry insiders said they were wasting Maya's peak years. They said young prodigies had a limited window to capitalize on their talent. They said the world would forget about her if she did not strike while the iron was hot. But Maya's family ignored these warnings. They had not come this far to let strangers dictate their daughter's life. Maya thrived under this balanced approach. She continued to excel at the academy, earning praise from even the toughest professors. She made true friends among the other students, people who valued her for more than her talent. She explored London with her mother, discovering museums and parks and quiet cafes where she could think and compose. She stayed connected with her father and brother through daily video calls, but not everything was easy. Fame brought complications that Maya had never imagined. People recognized her on the street and asked for photographs. Paparazzi followed her to school, trying to capture candid shots. Online comments ranged from adoring to cruel. Some people built her up as a goddess. Others tore her down as an overrated child. The constant attention was exhausting. There were also people who tried to take advantage of her. Fake managers with promises they could not keep. Photographers who wanted inappropriate pictures. Business people with schemes to use her name for products she did not believe in. Maya learned quickly that not everyone who smiled at her was a friend. She built walls around herself for protection. The loneliest part was being separated from her father and brother. Her mother was wonderful company, but Maya missed the complete feeling of having her whole family together. She missed her father's jokes at dinner. She missed annoying her brother and being annoyed by him. She missed the small house where she had grown up, with its creaky floors and leaky roof. London was exciting, but it was not home. Every few months, her father would save enough money to fly out and visit. Those weeks were the happiest of Maya's life. The family would explore the city together, eat at restaurants, watch shows. Maya would play for her father, showing him everything she had learned. He would listen with tears in his eyes, amazed at how much she had grown. Then he would have to leave again, and Maya would cry for days. Her brother grew up fast during those years apart. When Maya had left, he was just a little kid who cared only about cartoons and candy. But video calls showed him changing. His voice got deeper. He got taller. He developed his own interests and personality. Maya felt like she was watching his childhood from a distance, unable to be part of it. That guilt stayed with her always. Her grandmother's health continued to decline. Maya spoke with her on video calls whenever possible. The old woman's voice grew weaker, but her spirit remained strong. She always asked Maya to play something for her. Maya would position her phone so her grandmother could see the piano and listen for as long as she wanted. Sometimes hours would pass like this, with no words needed, just music flowing across the miles. One morning, Maya woke to her mother sitting on the edge of her bed with a sad expression. She knew immediately what had happened. Her grandmother had passed away during the night. She had gone peacefully in her sleep, with the photograph of her husband clutched in her hand. The night of the special concert arrived with great anticipation. News of Maya performing her grandfather's lost compositions had spread worldwide. Tickets sold out within minutes of going on sale. Scalpers offered seats for 10 times the original price. Documentary crews requested permission to film. It was the most publicized event in the Academy's century-long history. Maya was now 14 years old. She had grown taller and more confident since her first performance. Her face had lost some of its childish roundness. Her eyes held a depth that came from experiencing both triumph and tragedy. She was still shy in many situations, but she no longer feared the stage. It had become her sanctuary, the one place where she felt completely herself. Her family had gathered in London for this important night. Her father had taken time off work. Her brother, now a teenager himself, had come despite his schoolwork. They all wore their finest clothes and sat in the front row, ready to support Maya through what would be an emotional performance. The empty seat beside them was for her grandmother, who was there in spirit if not in body. Backstage, Maya held her grandfather's journal close to her chest. She had memorized every note of the piece she would play tonight. It was called Whispers of the Heart, according to the journal. Her grandfather had written it for her grandmother on their wedding anniversary. He had never played it for anyone except her in the privacy of their home. With the curtains drawn and the world shut out, Professor Helena came to check on Maya before the performance. The stern teacher had grown fond of her unusual student over the years. She saw something of herself in Maya, the same determination, the same devotion to music above all else. She put a hand on Maya's shoulder and told her that her grandfather would have been proud. Maya nodded, unable to speak without crying. The concert hall filled with some of the most influential people in the music world. Record executives, concert promoters, famous performers, respected critics. They had all come to witness this unique event. Many expected to be impressed. Few expected to be changed. None could have predicted what was about to happen. Maya walked onto the stage with quiet grace. She wore a simple, cream-colored dress that her grandmother had started making before she passed. Her mother had finished sewing it, following the pattern her grandmother had left behind. It felt like wearing her grandmother's love. Every step Maya took was accompanied by the warmth of family history. She sat at the piano and looked out at the sea of faces. So many strangers, so many expectations. But among them were the faces that mattered most. Her father with tears already forming in his eyes. Her mother clasping her hands in prayer. Her brother giving her a thumbs up and a goofy grin. They were her anchor, her reason, her home. Maya addressed the audience before she began playing. She rarely spoke at concerts, preferring to let her music communicate. But tonight was different. Tonight required words. She told them about her grandfather, a man she had never met but loved with all her heart. She told them about his talent that he kept hidden out of fear. She told them about her grandmother who had guarded his music for decades, waiting for the right person to share it with. She told them that person turned out to be her. Her voice wavered as she spoke, but she pushed through. She explained that the piece she was about to play had only been heard by two people in history: her grandfather who wrote it and her grandmother who received it. Tonight it would be heard by the world for the first time. She asked the audience to listen not just with their ears but with their hearts. Then she turned to the piano and began to play. The opening notes of Whispers of the Heart floated through the air like autumn leaves. They were gentle and tender, filled with a young man's nervousness about expressing his deepest feelings. Maya could imagine her grandfather sitting at an old piano, composing these notes for the woman he loved. She could imagine his hands trembling just as hers did now. The melody developed slowly, telling a story without words. It spoke of first meetings and shy glances, of walks in the park and conversations that lasted until sunrise, of discovering that someone else understood your soul. Maya played each phrase as if she had lived these moments herself. In a way, she had. Through the music, she knew her grandparents' love story better than anyone. The middle section grew more passionate. The notes became bolder, more confident. This was the moment of commitment, the decision to spend a lifetime together. The harmony was rich and complex, two melodic lines weaving around each other, but never losing their connection. It represented two people becoming one while remaining individuals. Maya poured her understanding of love into these passages. Then came a section that surprised everyone, including Maya when she had first discovered it. The music turned melancholic. Minor chords crept in. The rhythm slowed. According to her grandfather's notes in the margins of the journal, this represented the challenges they faced: poverty and illness and judgment from others who thought they did not belong together. Years of struggle that tested their bond, but the darkness did not last. Just when the audience thought the piece would end in sadness, a new theme emerged. It was the original melody, transformed by experience. It was brighter and stronger than before. It showed how love could be refined by hardship, how two people could become more connected through the trials they survived together. The audience felt their hearts lifting with the music. The final section was the most beautiful. It was pure gratitude, unfiltered joy, complete devotion. It thanked the universe for bringing two souls together. It celebrated every moment they had shared. It promised that their love would last beyond death itself. Maya played these notes with tears streaming down her face. She did not wipe them away. They were part of the performance. When the last note faded, Maya kept her hands on the keys. She could not move. She felt drained of everything, empty and full at the same time. The audience sat in silence. Many were crying openly. Others stared at the stage as if they had witnessed something sacred. The applause started slowly, reverently, as if no one wanted to break the spell. Then it grew and grew until it became a wall of sound. People rose to their feet. They clapped until their hands hurt. They called Maya's name. They called her grandfather's name. They celebrated music that had waited 50 years to be heard. Maya's father was the first to reach the stage. He climbed the steps and wrapped his daughter in his arms. He whispered that he had felt his father tonight for the first time. He said he finally understood who the old man had been, not the silent figure he remembered from childhood, but a passionate artist with a heart full of music. Maya held him tightly and shared his tears. The concert made international headlines. Music critics called it one of the most significant premieres in decades. They praised Maya not just for her technical skill, but for her emotional depth, her ability to channel feelings that predated her own existence. They compared her grandfather's composition to masterpieces by the greatest romantic composers. Suddenly, the world wanted to hear more. Maya's grandfather became famous after death. His story inspired people everywhere. A man who had kept his dreams locked away, whose music was finally freed by his granddaughter. It was a tale of family, legacy, and the power of art to transcend time. Documentary makers approached Maya about telling the full story. Publishers wanted to release her grandfather's complete journals. The interest was overwhelming. Maya agreed to record all of her grandfather's compositions. It took months in a professional studio, carefully bringing each piece to life with the same care she had shown at the concert. The album was released to critical acclaim and commercial success. Profits were donated to a scholarship fund for underprivileged music students, in honor of her grandfather who never had such opportunities, but with success came new challenges. Maya was busier than ever. She had her academy studies, her recording sessions, her interviews, her public appearances. She rarely had time to simply be a teenager. She missed hanging out with friends, watching movies, sleeping late on weekends. Her schedule was controlled by managers and publicists, who always needed something from her. Her mother noticed the exhaustion in her eyes. Maya tried to hide it, but she could not fool the woman who had raised her. Her mother started saying no to requests. She canceled appearances. She cleared Maya's calendar for rest and recovery. Some industry people were angry, but Maya's mother did not care. Her daughter's health mattered more than any contract. During one of these breaks, Maya went back to her small town. She wanted to visit her grandmother's grave and spend time in the house where everything had begun. She walked through the rooms slowly, touching objects that held memories. The old keyboard still sat in the corner. The photograph of her grandparents still hung on the wall. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had changed. She sat alone in her grandmother's garden as the sun set. The flowers were overgrown now, with no one to tend them. Birds sang their evening songs. The air smelled of earth and life and peace. Maya felt something she had not felt in a long time, stillness. Her mind was quiet. Her heart was calm. She could hear her own thoughts for the first time in months. She realized she had been so focused on success that she had forgotten why she started playing music. It was never about fame or money or awards. The years after graduation opened doors Maya had never imagined. Invitations poured in from every corner of the world. Symphony orchestras wanted her as a guest soloist. Music festivals offered headline spots. Governments requested her presence at state dinners and cultural events. She had become more than a musician. She had become a symbol of what determination and talent could achieve. Maya carefully selected which opportunities to accept. She remembered her promise to herself about doing things on her own terms. Not every glamorous invitation was right for her. She preferred intimate venues where she could connect with audiences, smaller events where her music could be truly heard rather than just observed. She turned down offers that felt more about spectacle than substance. One invitation she could not refuse came from her home country. The National Concert Hall, the most prestigious venue in her nation, wanted her for a special performance. It would be a homecoming celebration, broadcast live to millions of viewers. The president himself would attend. Maya felt nervous about the pressure, but also honored beyond words. This was where her story had begun. It felt right to return. The preparations for the homecoming concert took months. Maya worked with a full orchestra for the first time, learning how to collaborate with dozens of other musicians. It was different from solo piano work. She had to listen carefully, adjust her timing, be part of something larger than herself. The conductor was patient with her as she learned this new skill. He recognized her humble attitude despite her fame. Meanwhile, Maya's foundation grew stronger every year. They had now helped over 10,000 students access music education. Some of those students had gone on to become professional musicians themselves. Maya received letters from parents thanking her for changing their children's lives. She kept every letter in a special box, reading them whenever she needed motivation. One letter stood out among all the others. It was from a young boy named Daniel who lived in her small hometown. He wrote that he had been shy and lonely just like Maya once was. He had discovered piano after watching a video of her performing. Now he practiced every day on a keyboard donated by her foundation. He dreamed of studying at the academy someday, just like she had. He signed the letter with a drawing of a grand piano. Maya was moved by Daniel's story. She asked her team to find out more about him. They learned that he was 10 years old, living with his single mother in a tiny apartment. His mother worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. There was no money for music lessons, but Daniel taught himself by watching online videos. Just as Maya had done before the world discovered her, she decided to do something special. Without telling anyone, Maya traveled back to her small town. She showed up at Daniel's door unannounced, carrying a brand new piano. The boy's face when he saw her was something Maya would never forget. He could not speak. He could not move. He just stared at the famous musician standing in his hallway as if she were a dream. Maya spent the entire day with Daniel and his mother. She listened to him play and gave him tips to improve. She told him about her own journey, the fears she had faced, the obstacles she had overcome. She made him promise to never give up, no matter how hard things got. She gave him her personal contact information and told him to reach out whenever he needed guidance or encouragement. Before she left, Maya asked Daniel to play one more piece for her. He chose a simple melody she recognized. It was a song she had composed years ago, during her darkest time at the academy. She had no idea it had reached someone like Daniel, had given him hope in his own difficult moments. Hearing it played back to her by this hopeful child brought tears to her eyes. This was why she made music. This was the point of everything. The homecoming concert was scheduled for a warm summer evening. The National Concert Hall was decorated with thousands of flowers. Dignitaries filled the front rows in their finest attire. Regular citizens who had won ticket lotteries sat in the back, equally excited. Television cameras were positioned throughout the venue, ready to broadcast Maya's return to the world. Maya's entire family was there. Her father, now retired, sat proudly in a reserved seat. Her mother, grayer but still beautiful, held a handkerchief ready for the tears she knew would come. Her brother, now a young man with his own career, had flown in from another country where he was studying engineering. They were together again, as they had been at the very beginning. The orchestra took their places on stage. Musicians from the best ensembles in the country, selected specifically for this event. The conductor raised his baton. The audience fell silent. A spotlight illuminated the grand piano at the center of the stage. Then Maya appeared from the wings, walking with the confidence that had taken her years to develop. She wore a red dress that matched the color of the roses decorating the hall. It was a tribute to her grandmother, whose favorite flowers had been red roses. Around her neck hung the small pendant containing her grandfather's photograph, the one her grandmother had given her before she left for London. She touched it briefly before sitting at the piano. The program for the evening was ambitious. Maya would perform 3 pieces with the orchestra, followed by 2 solo works. The first orchestral piece was a famous concerto that showcased technical brilliance. The second was a contemporary work by a composer from her country, celebrating cultural heritage. The third was her grandfather's masterpiece, Whispers of the Heart. Arranged for full orchestra by Maya herself, the concerto went flawlessly. Maya's fingers danced across the keys with precision and passion. The orchestra followed her lead beautifully. The audience was captivated from the first note to the last. When it ended, the applause lasted for several minutes. Critics in the audience nodded to each other, acknowledging that Maya had matured into a world-class performer. The contemporary piece was more challenging. It incorporated traditional instruments and melodies from Maya's culture, sounds she had grown up hearing but never formally studied. She had worked hard to honor these traditions while adding her own interpretation. The result was a celebration of where she came from, a musical love letter to her homeland. The audience responded with proud tears. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The orchestral version of her grandfather's composition. Maya had spent months arranging this piece, expanding what had been a simple piano work into a full symphony. She had to imagine what her grandfather would have wanted, how he would have heard these melodies performed by violins and cellos and horns. It was the most difficult creative challenge of her life. The orchestra began with a gentle introduction that Maya had added. It represented the silence before her grandfather had the courage to compose, the empty years when his music existed only in his head. Then the piano entered with the familiar opening notes. But this time it was not alone. Strings surrounded the melody like a warm embrace. Woodwinds added color and depth. The music was bigger than ever before. Maya played with her eyes closed, feeling her grandfather's presence beside her. She imagined him conducting the orchestra, finally hearing his creation performed as he had always dreamed. She imagined her grandmother in the audience, seeing her wedding gift celebrated by the whole nation. She imagined generations of musicians who had kept their art hidden, finally being recognized through this single piece. The climax of the orchestral arrangement was overwhelming. Every instrument played together in perfect harmony. The sound filled every inch of the concert hall. People in the audience held their breath, afraid to make any noise that might interfere with this moment. Some closed their eyes and let the music wash over them like waves on a shore. When the piece ended, the silence lasted longer than usual. People needed time to return from wherever the music had taken them. Then the applause began, and it did not stop. The standing ovation lasted over 10 minutes. Musicians in the orchestra wiped tears from their faces. The conductor turned to Maya and bowed, honoring her talent and her heritage. Maya stood to acknowledge the applause, but she pointed toward the audience. She asked them to clap for her grandfather who had written this beautiful music. She asked them to clap for her grandmother who had preserved it. She asked them to clap for every artist who had ever been too afraid to share their gift. The applause grew even louder, becoming a celebration of all creative souls. After a brief intermission, Maya returned for her solo pieces. The first was one of her own compositions, written specifically for this evening. She called it Coming Home. It captured the conflicting emotions of returning to a place that had shaped you but also watched you leave. The joy of familiar faces. The sadness of seeing how things had changed. The gratitude for roots that kept you grounded no matter how far you flew. The second solo piece was a surprise. Maya had kept it secret from everyone, even her family. She announced that she wanted to perform the very first piece she had ever played. When she was 4 years old and had just discovered her gift, it was the classical composition she had heard on television and then recreated perfectly on her grandfather's old keyboard. Playing this piece again, after all these years, was emotional for Maya. She remembered being a tiny girl who did not understand what was happening. She remembered her mother's shock and tears. She remembered the journey that had started from that single moment. 20 years had passed since Maya first stepped onto that stage as a nervous 12-year-old girl. The world had changed in countless ways. Technology had transformed how people listened to music. New stars had risen and fallen in the entertainment industry. Trends had come and gone faster than anyone could track. But Maya had remained a constant presence, evolving with the times while staying true to her core. She was now in her early 30s, no longer a prodigy, but a master. Her face showed the gentle lines of experience. Her hands, which had played millions of notes, moved with effortless grace. She had performed in every major concert hall on earth. She had won awards that filled entire rooms. She had collaborated with legendary artists across every genre. Yet she remained as humble as the girl from the small town. Her foundation had grown into one of the largest music education charities in the world. Millions of children had benefited from their programs. Hundreds of schools had been built or renovated with their funding. Thousands of instruments had been donated to communities that needed them. The scholarship program that started in her grandparents' names now supported students in dozens of countries. Daniel, the shy boy from her hometown, had become one of those success stories. He had studied at the Royal Academy of Music just as he had dreamed. He had become a renowned pianist in his own right, though he always credited Maya as his inspiration and mentor. They had performed together several times over the years, their relationship evolving from teacher and student to colleagues and friends. Maya had also found personal happiness. She had married a man she met at a charity event, a doctor who worked with children in underprivileged communities. He understood her demanding career and supported her without jealousy or resentment. They had 2 children together, a boy and a girl who had inherited their mother's musical talent but were free to pursue whatever paths they chose. Her father had passed away 5 years earlier, surrounded by his family, listening to Maya play his favorite song. His death had shattered Maya, but she had found strength in the music as she always did. She composed a piece in his memory, a gentle melody that captured his quiet strength and unconditional love. She played it at his funeral and then retired it forever. Too precious to share with anyone but family, her brother had become a successful engineer, designing instruments that help people with disabilities make music. He credited Maya's journey for inspiring him to combine technology and art. Her mother lived with Maya now, her health fragile but her spirit unbroken. She spent her days in Maya's garden, tending flowers like she had learned from her mother-in-law, the music world honored Maya with a special concert for her 20th anniversary in the industry. It was held at the same auditorium where she had performed in that talent competition as a child. The venue had been renovated since then, made larger and more modern, but it still held the energy of that life-changing night. Organizing the event was complicated. So many people wanted to participate. Former classmates from the academy, composers she had premiered works for, orchestra musicians she had performed alongside. The program had to be carefully curated to fit everything into one evening. In the end, they created a celebration that spanned 4 hours. Maya arrived at the venue early, before anyone else. She wanted a moment alone in the space where her public journey had begun. She walked through the empty hall, touching the seats, remembering how full they had been that night. She stood on the stage and looked out at the darkness, imagining all the faces that had watched her transform from nervous child to confident artist. She thought about her grandmother's words that had given her courage. She thought about her grandfather's music that had connected her to her roots. She thought about every struggle and triumph that had brought her to this moment. The timeline of her life played in her mind like a symphony, each movement flowing naturally into the next. Her family began arriving. Her husband brought their children, dressed in their finest clothes, excited to watch their mother be celebrated. Her mother came in a wheelchair, pushed by a caregiver, but insisted on transferring to a regular seat so she could stand during the ovations. Her brother brought his wife and their children. Maya's nieces and nephews, who adored their famous aunt. Daniel arrived with his own family. He had married a fellow musician, a violinist he had met at the academy. Their 3 children were already showing musical talent. He and Maya embraced backstage, no words needed between them. Their bond transcended the usual relationship of benefactor and recipient. They were family by choice, connected through music. The concert began with a video presentation showing highlights from Maya's career, clips from her first talent show performance, recordings from her academy years, footage from concerts around the world, interviews where she spoke about her mission and values. The audience watched 20 years compressed into 20 minutes, marveling at all she had accomplished. Then came the performances. Daniel played first, honoring his mentor with a composition he had written specifically for this night. It traced their relationship from his childhood letter to their current friendship. Maya watched from backstage, tears flowing freely. She had never felt more grateful for the impact her work had made. Other musicians followed, each sharing what Maya had meant to them. Classmates spoke about how she had helped them during difficult times at the academy. Composers described how she had brought their visions to life better than they had imagined. Young musicians from her foundation programs performed, showing the world what opportunities could create. Finally, it was Maya's turn. She walked onto the stage to a standing ovation before she had played a single note. The audience refused to sit down. They clapped for 5 full minutes, expressing decades of appreciation. Maya stood at center stage, overwhelmed by the love surrounding her. She thought about how far she had come from the girl who could barely walk through that curtain. When the applause finally subsided, Maya spoke to the audience. She did not have a prepared speech. She simply spoke from her heart. She thanked everyone who had supported her, naming people who had been especially important. She talked about her family and what their sacrifices had meant. She shared stories that made people laugh and cry. Then she sat at the piano and prepared to play. She had chosen a special piece for this occasion. It was a medley that wove together all the most important music of her life. Her grandfather's compositions, her grandmother's lullabies, songs her father had loved, pieces from her academy days, melodies that represented each stage of her journey. The medley lasted nearly an hour. Maya had never played anything so long in a single sitting. Her hands grew tired but did not falter. Her concentration never wavered. She was telling her entire story through music, inviting the audience to experience her life alongside her. It was the most personal performance she had ever given. The final section of the medley was new. Maya had composed it secretly over the past year, working on it in stolen moments when her family was asleep. It was called Legacy, and it represented everything she hoped to leave behind. The melody was simple enough for a child to play, yet deep enough to move the most sophisticated listener. It was her gift to the future. When the last note faded, Maya sat motionless at the piano. She felt empty, as if she had poured out every part of herself. The audience sat in respectful silence, understanding the magnitude of what they had witnessed. Then her children broke the spell. They ran onto the stage and hugged their mother, not caring about protocol or performance. The audience laughed and applauded at the genuine display. Maya's husband joined them on stage, followed by her mother and brother. The entire family stood together in front of the audience, united by love and music. Maya looked at each of their faces, seeing reflections of everyone who had come before. Her grandmother's gentleness in her mother's eyes, her grandfather's creative spirit in her brother's smile, her father's strength in her husband's steady presence. The concert concluded with a surprise. The stage crew rolled out Maya's grandfather's old keyboard, the one she had played at 4 years old, the one that had started everything. It still had broken keys and imperfect sound, but it was the most valuable instrument in the world to Maya. She asked her children to join her at the keyboard. They had learned to play on normal pianos, but they had heard stories about this special instrument their whole lives. Maya taught them the first melody she had ever played, the same one her grandfather had composed in secret. The three of them played together, 3 generations connected through a single song. The audience wept openly. They were witnessing something rare and beautiful. Not just musical talent, but musical heritage passing from heart to heart. Maya looked at her children's hands on the keys, seeing her grandfather's hands, her grandmother's hands, her own hands at 4 years old. Time collapsed into a single perfect moment. After the concert, there was a reception where guests could meet Maya and her family. Hundreds of people waited in line for the chance to shake her hand or take a photograph. Maya stayed until the last person had been greeted, well past midnight. She believed that everyone who had come to celebrate her deserved her time and attention. The next morning, Maya woke up in a hotel room surrounded by flowers from well-wishers.